This is when things really started to get crazy.
They never figured that there ever would be a John Lennon.
What I have to lose?
You wanted that jet.
I want the jet.
Johnny wants the jet.
Give him the jet for crying out loud!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I'm Tom Merritt.
Hey, I'm Brian Brushwood, but more importantly, Bryce, did you know about this story, or is this movie okay?
I did know about the story. I knew of it. So that what we heard was a trailer for the upcoming Netflix docu-series. It's actually a multi-part series called Pepsi, Where's My Jet? When a teenager takes Pepsi on its up on its no fine print TV commercial to trade Pepsi points for a Harrier jet, it starts a firestorm in advertising that we're still feeling today. That is streaming on Netflix November 17, and it's a series.
Feeling it, though? Are we still feeling it, or do we just not understand what the little letters of the screen mean?
I mean, we're still putting up with it today. I mean, it's like apparently you're held to account for things that you claim in advertisements.
Turns out,
a bit more
held to account. Yeah.
I am a little bit worried. I think I'd be more excited if it was a single movie style documentary instead of a docu-series. I think I'm a little bit cautious ever since, what was the McDonald's Monopoly documentary?
The HBO one.
Yeah, whatever.
That felt a little bit stretched then.
Well, this is going to be 4 parts. It looks like. So it sounds like the trailer's pretty bombastic. It's a very good trailer.
Give him the jet.
Give him. He wants the jet.
Give me
They do this like corny zoom in when they do those slogans too. He wants the jet.
He wants the jet. But I want the primary target.
Oh, okay. There you go.
We never even explained what the thing is.
You'll figure it out, folks. That's not what we're here for. Okay. Stop me if you've heard this one. Netflix subscribers rose.
Well, I mean, isn't that their gimmick? That's their brand?
Yeah, but remember they fell once.
Yeah, that's right. Like stocks went down when they made Quickster.
I mean, they rose and they rose and they rose, but then they fell once. It's over. It's over for Netflix. Netflix subscribers rose by 2.41 million last quarter. 1.43 million of those came in the Asia Pacific region, where it has had consistent growth. But all the markets grew this time. The US-Canada region showed the smallest growth. It only added around 100,000 subscribers. You could call that flat, but it's not a decline. Netflix predicts it will add 4.5 million subscribers this quarter. That's the last time they're going to guess how many subscribers they're going to get, or the last time they're going to tell anybody. Netflix is no longer going to do subscriber projections. They're still going to report subscriber numbers. Some people got confused by that. So it's not that they're going to hide subscriber numbers. They're just not going to predict what the subscriber numbers will look like for the next quarter. Netflix thinks it will get double the growth this quarter because of big releases. So it's got The Crown coming out. It's got the holidays coming out. So there's always an upsurge of people watching stuff around the holidays. They've got their cheaper ad-supported tier launching in November, but Netflix doesn't think that's going to add a lot of subscribers. And then there's other efforts that people are talking about out there, like cracking down on password sharing, but that's not going global until 2023. They made that clear. It will go global in 2023, but not until then. So a lot of armchair analysis has proved to be a little bit off with Netflix. It didn't keep going down. It's not relying on some of these things for subscriber growth as much as people think. It also isn't going to cut back its spending. Netflix is spending $17 billion on content this year, and co-CEO Ted Sarandos said, yeah, that's about what we should spend. We're not going to cut. We're going to keep spending at that level, which they had continued to increase. So in some ways, it's slowing down, but they're not cutting back. Netflix also repeated its commitment to the binge release model. It wrote in its shareholder letter, "We believe the ability for our members to immerse themselves in a story from start to finish increases their enjoyment, but also their likelihood to tell their friends, which then means more people watch, join, and stay with Netflix." Netflix showed a line graph comparing the spike in Google searches related to its Dahmer series, which was released all at once, to the lower weekly spikes of searches related to Amazon's Lord of the Rings. It also said, quote, "It's hard to imagine, for example, how a Korean title like Squid Game would have become a mega hit globally without the momentum that came from people being able to binge it." Now, there's one other thing I want to get to here. Actually, a couple other things I want to get to here. But Brian, we've had that debate going back and forth about whether the binge model is better or the weekly release model is better, or some hybrid where maybe you release 3 at the beginning and then go to weekly. And Netflix is on this thing. They've changed with advertising, they've changed with password crackdowns, but on this thing, they're sticking to their guns.
So there's your friend of mine, Justin Robert Young, has for about over a decade passionately insisted that Netflix has been crazy for doing the binge model. Even after it proved to be a gigantic financial success, he again was saying so on another program that we were doing. I believe, and for the first time, I realized that there was probably we needed to do some disambiguation. Are we talking about what is best for the bottom line of the company? Are we doing what is best for the hype engine? Are we doing what is best to be present in the cultural gestalt? Or are we talking about what's best for our own personal enjoyment? And so this is where I preemptively remind people that cordkillers@gmail.com is a place that you can write us. For personal enjoyment, I must say that the hybrid model is my favorite. I actually, if a full binge feels like a pretty big commitment, and of course, as Bryce pointed out earlier today, once everything's out, it's factually identical. The moment has come and gone, right?
It's a problem for at most 10 weeks or however long the order is. But even once you get a few weeks in, and most people, how many people are going to binge everything in 1 week? Probably not everybody. So it's a problem that becomes less relevant over time. Yes,
factually by the numbers. But then if we want to put on our cultural gestalt hats, I don't know that I would have advertised Andor to other, I sort of berated Justin into giving it a try, and it seems to have landed very well. He loves it, says it's the best thing that Disney's done with the Star Wars franchise. And I agree, but I don't know that I ever would have gotten all the way in at that moment if it weren't for them releasing 3 episodes in the very first night. What about you, Tom?
It's hard to say, right? We can't do a scientific test on that. I feel like I still would have been interested, but there's certainly something in those first 2 episodes that paired very nicely that kept me interested. I felt like, there's 3. I guess I ought to watch all 3. And then I watched all 3 happily. So it worked. I think it depends on the story whether you need to release 1, 2, or 3 all at once, and that's hard to gauge. It's a guess, because what you want to do is get people excited, and sometimes giving them a couple of extra episodes at the beginning has proved to get them more excited, because even if they don't love the first one, they might like it enough if the second one is there to just go ahead and keep watching and then start to love it. Yeah, so I totally get what you're saying. I do think that most people binge things because most people don't watch things immediately when they release. So this is a problem of a subsection of viewers, and it's a problem for a subsection of shows that are the most popular shows. So the shows that really need the buzz, really need people talking about them, might benefit over a week-to-week release, which is why you see Marvel doing it. It's why you see Star Wars doing it on Disney+. I don't know if it works for less talked about shows when people aren't going to get them till later anyway. I know so many people are like, oh yeah, I'll watch that, sometime. And then it's always a bitch because the entire season is there, or they're catching up. And then they catch up and get to the weekly release and then feel like, now I have to wait. So I don't think there is a single answer. I think it depends on the show. It depends on the audience.
So some of the things we've seen HBO Max do twofers. Our Flag Means Death is a 30-minute show, so they would do 2 every single week. I rather like that because 1 wasn't enough to keep me satisfied and happy. I was, really always happy for that second episode. Likewise, we've seen Amazon and other shows do 3 and then week over week, which is what we're seeing Disney Plus do. There is, I think, a clever twist to the Netflix. Their stated brand has been binging. So for them to diverge from that would mean doing some kind of tap dancing about how they're walking away from the thing that they've claimed for a very long time. So On top of that, though, they kind of get to have their cake and eat it too when it comes to like the latest season of Stranger Things, which technically was a bingeable release, and then separately another bingeable release.
And they actually addressed that in the earnings call and said that is entirely production issues. That is not our strategy. If we had had our preference, we would have released everything at once.
That sounds like a good thing to say on a sales call.
I mean, but why? Why would, if you're saying binging is the thing we love to do, why would you try to hide that, like, well, except to Stranger Things at work? Like, I don't understand the motivation for them to cover that up.
Here's what I suspect. I suspect it was a natural experiment, and they measured the results and they said, which will cause us more joy or pain, to stick with our branding position that we carved out from the very beginning and we've owned completely, or is the benefit of splitting this up so great that we can
What's the benefit of going onto the earnings call and doubling down on binge releases rather than saying, hey, we've figured out that there are different releases for different things and they work differently. And while we think the binge release works really great, it depends on the show. Like, why not? What would be the downside in saying that?
Here's metaphor incoming. Let's say there's a Cadillac dealership that also sells Slurpees, and the one that sells Slurpees makes more money. Then Cadillac has to decide, do we want to be the Slurpee car or not? And they say, well, we did make more money with the Slurpees, but we don't want to be the Slurpee car. So
your assertion is that Netflix saying binging is preferable is some kind of positive press message, and I'm not sure I buy that.
No. That's also not what I said.
Well, but that's what I'm getting from the Cadillac Slurpee thing is like, well, we don't. Slurpees would hurt the brand.
What I said and what I intend to say is that I believe that factually, by the numbers, the natural experiment of Stranger Things dual release probably yielded an uptick in everything from social media presence to the number of eyeballs on, and factually might have been to the benefit of Netflix and might be a better strategy going forward. However, to publicly embrace that as that's our new game would mean destroying the name, the brand, the value that they've developed over the last 10 years.
That's where I depart from you. I don't think publicly acknowledging that would destroy the name, the brand, the value that they've gone with.
Also not what I said. I said embrace, to say we're giving up the old thing, we're doing a new thing.
Well, then I'll use your term.
So instead, they doubled down
on
their commitment to the original thing.
I just don't buy that. I don't buy that would be damaging for them to say that.
Well, okay. Traditionally, it's traditionally it's a bad idea when a brand can't stick to its core principles and value and changes messaging.
I guess what I'm saying is, I don't think
DVDs in the mail. You can't get away from DVDs in the mail.
Okay,
Brian.
But I don't know
and
that's
the brand.
How did that go for them when they?
I think it was very helpful. I think it was very successful.
Eventually, long term, short term was not a great thing.
I may be absolutely wrong. I'm certain it's certainly probable, but I don't think binging is the core value to Netflix. I think ease of watching is the core value of Netflix. I really don't think they see that as something that they have to pound on. To me, it's like we have an amazing breadth of titles is what they're not out there advertising binging is what I'm saying. The only time I hear them talk about it is in the earnings call. They're feeling pressure from investors who are like, hey, why don't you do different release schedules, which they do already. And they're like, well, because the reason we haven't shifted that, dear investor, is because we think it brings in more money and brings in more viewers. I don't see them marketing themselves based on that.
That is fascinating. Cordkillers@gmail.com. Please, everybody chime in, because for 20 years, I feel like they rode the Battlestar Galactica Binge Everything once because it was on DVD, Binge Firefly all at once because it was canceled before you ever even heard of it. Like in my mind, they've never owned any word besides binging, and they had to fight uphill
created it
to create on demand.
I didn't feel like they've rested their brand value on it. That's where I depart.
Interesting. I guess I can't picture a Snickers without peanuts, and I can't picture a Netflix without binging. That's how hard they've leaned into that word.
I think Netflix is a Milky Way. You decide. Cordkillers@gmail.com.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't realize how spicy today was going to get. That's amazing.
Yeah. Wait, it's a Netflix earnings report. You
Yeah,
got
dude, this is the
something.
hottest takes on the internet. You think other people get fired up about this? No way.
Separate from that earnings report, Netflix VP of Gaming Mike Verdu told TechCrunch Disrupt that Netflix is seriously exploring a cloud gaming offering and is getting ready to open its 5th gaming studio in Southern California that will be led by Chaco Sonny, former Blizzard EP of Overwatch. Verdu said, "For us, delivering games to your TV or to your PC is value add. We're not asking you to subscribe as a console replacement, so it's a completely different business model." The future of cloud gaming, if you don't follow that sort of thing, is, well, cloudy. Google announced the end of Stadia coming in January. A lot of people are skeptical of whether it's really going to catch on or not. But Verdu specifically said he thought the problem with Google Stadia was the business model. We talked so much, Brian, about like, what is Netflix really doing with gaming? It seems like what they're doing with gaming is saying we're going to tiptoe into creating a dominant mobile and desktop video game service that at first will be for free with your Netflix subscription, and therefore you're way more likely to try it than to spend money on something like Stadia or Xbox Cloud Gaming or even NVIDIA GeForce Now.
Now, let me ratchet down the Brian rhetoric here. I will go to the mat to say
Can you binge games, Brian?
is that Netflix and binging are synonymous, and that's not an accident, and that's something that they're recommitting to. But I'm less committed on saying that their cloud computing idea or cloud gaming idea is good or bad. Here's what I do know. That in my 25 years of being a hardcore fan of games of all varieties, of covering games professionally, I ain't never seen any cloud gaming anything ever, anywhere succeed. They've all folded, they've all failed. In the beginning, the reason for cloud gaming is because you could offload the high-end GPU, CPU difficulty, the heavy lifting to some bigger, better computer, and you'll have a little bit of lag, and it's gotten better over time, but the best I've ever experienced actually doing it has felt soupy and late, and maybe it was Stadia's business model. Netflix has an advantaged position in that they never have to tell anyone whether this has or has not been a success. If it is not very popular, they get to say they've raised awareness with their brand deal related games and so on. I am not very optimistic about this, but in this case, I would actually defer to both you, Tom, and Bryce on your takes on this.
Yeah, I look at this and I think, man, Netflix is super smart. What I've seen with cloud gaming is when people use, not just sign up, but use things like Xbox Cloud or NVIDIA GeForce Now, which are the two successful cloud gaming enterprises right now, they love it. What I see people saying they don't love is skepticism. Like, I don't want to try it because, or I tried it once, but I didn't like the lag, and not giving it a long-term chance. But everybody who uses it long-term is like, honestly, it's actually pretty great because I can play everywhere and I don't have to think about this and that. So I think there is something to cloud gaming, but getting over that hill of skepticism, getting over that hill of resistance is huge. And what Netflix's advantage here is we don't have to get you to add anything. We're just going to give it to you. And we don't have to worry about, do we have all the titles or not, because we're just going to give it to you. We're going to have 5 studios creating something. One of them will end up being the House of Cards or the Stranger Things of our video game. And then people will try it and people will say, oh, well, I'm already subscribed to Netflix. Might as well try this thing. And then the guess is, like you say, Brian, they can either say like, well, we raised awareness of Netflix and this was a fun thing if it doesn't work, or they've built a viable cloud gaming competitor that they then separate the way they separated Netflix streaming from DVDs and turn it into a whole business of its own.
And I think it speaks a lot to the types of games that Netflix is looking at when their 2 big games as a part of Netflix games have been Into the Breach, which is a very successful tactical sort of pixel art game, and Oxenfree, which is a narrative, a story-based game. And so I can see where, yeah, maybe they're not trying to put Call of Duty on your Apple TV through the Netflix app, but if they can say, hey, you know that Oxenfree game that you never played? you can just watch it now on Netflix, and every so often you click a button. Like, ultimately, we're seeing a blurring here. We could see a blurring here between Netflix's interactive platform, things like Bandersnatch, and gaming, and making those either a little more, I don't know, a little more involved or better. But I don't think that they're
immersive.
But I don't think it's going to be a reason to give powerhouse games. I think it's going to be very story driven. I could see them do stuff like some of the Telltale games, some of the very narrative, episodic based games. I think there's a lot
what captures me most, Brian, before I toss it back to you, is that all of the objections I keep hearing most often, the high index objections to cloud gaming. Well, I don't want to pay. You don't have to. It's part of your Netflix subscription. Well, you don't have. We know we don't have all the games, but it's free. Like it just gets past all of that. It's like, but here we're just going to give it to you. Try it. If you like it, great. If you don't, it's fine.
Well, and that point is 100% conceded. I will definitely confirm that I've tried. I tried to get into Red Dead Redemption, and it was just the streaming experience was just too soupy, too laggy, and was not fun for me. So even having tried it, I got over that hump, and it didn't work out. But now I'm thinking about what if Netflix, because every time you go to the Netflix page, it just starts blasting a preview at you. It can do something that no cloud anyone has been able to do before. No game anything has ever been done before. No loading screen, no downloading, no install. You are watching a trailer and you press and suddenly the cards are spread in front of you and it says, grab one of these cards, throw it on. And you're just playing the game instantly. Now, that truly could be different, is to take that temporal gap between knowing about a thing and now you're already playing it. They have a supreme advantage because the game's already preloaded, running, and just instantly streams to your system.
Yeah, that's pretty compelling. This is an informational question, not a challenge question. When did you last do the Red Dead Redemption thing? When was that?
3 years ago, and this is with gigabit fiber.
There's been a lot of progression since then, though, in these services.
And to be honest, I thought for sure, I was like, clearly we're over the hump. This is pretty good. And then it took one incident of lagging out or progress not saved, and then I was frustrated again. And again, it's not fair, but of course I'm going to remember that one incident of frustration.
Yeah. Which is, again, that brings me back to the Netflix thing, is like, so you're not going to be predisposed to try something where you have to sign up. But if Netflix does what you were just describing, it's like, no, just start playing the cards.
And even better,
you'll be doing it. You won't even think about it.
Exactly. You won't even know you're doing cloud gaming. And that could be the key to success, is the way cloud gaming
all
wins.
All of a sudden you're shooting
nobody
people
knows they're
and
doing
running
it.
around. And who knows? One other thing Netflix made clear in its earnings call, going back to that, was that Glass Onion's movie premiere in theaters a month before it comes to Netflix is not a change in policy. This feels like a lot of explaining, but here's what they said. Ted Sarandos emphasized that they make their movies to be watched on Netflix. He said, with 1 week of release in theaters, most people will see them on Netflix, just like they see all movies. Most people watch most movies at home. He said, this is all about buzz. The Glass Onion release in theaters, quote, sits somewhere between that week we have to run movies to qualify for awards and for the time we run them in a film festival, the time we travel around. It's a way of condensing them into a louder event. Glass Onion did debut at the Toronto Film Festival, and it will play in theaters November 23rd through the 29th, and then will not be available for a blackout period until it hits Netflix December 23rd. Here's where I think your earlier theory about binging absolutely would apply, Brian, which is like, don't think Netflix is going to start holding movies for theaters.
Right. And in this case, I will props to Netflix. Like, they know how to deliver a direct and honest, earnest statement like that. Because, and luckily, I've never assumed that Netflix exclusively meant I never go to a theater. In fact, I went to a theater on purpose for a day and date release to see El Camino. Me and the one other person in the theater seemed to really enjoy it.
Right.
But in this case, I'm glad. I'm really, really glad. And I hope they lean into theatrical pre-releases before it comes to the at-home experience.
And it does make sense that even the fact that this is like a film festival, even though this one was already as a film festival, rings a little odd. But just getting past that to the idea of, yeah, every once in a while we might do a theater release as a promotion makes perfect sense. If the theaters will play ball, which they are in this case, then yeah, they should do that more often. I think that's a fun thing for them to do.
Yeah, the faster we get to a world where watching a movie in the theater is more like seeing your favorite band in concert. And so, for example, one of the best memories I have in my entire life is being at South by Southwest for what was supposed to be a 15-minute showcase with the Foo Fighters, and instead they said, "Here's our brand new album. We're going to play it in its entirety." And like that experience is electric and wonderful, and I don't mind paying a decent chunk of change. I will definitely see Glass Onion in a theater, provided that theater is across the street and I get to have pizza and beer while watching it.
Yeah, I mean, if AMC and Regal and all those start to play along with this, I could see Netflix doing a thing where, like, the next Stranger Things, it's been on Netflix already. Come watch it again in a theater with your friends, pizza and beer and all that. Like you can find reasons for people to rewatch that bring people into theaters and build more buzz for Netflix. Like, absolutely, I could totally see that. Or premiere week communal watches, et cetera, et cetera. Get in free with your Netflix, get in discounted with your Netflix subscriptions. There's all kinds of things they could try if this starts to dissolve some of the resistance between theaters and Netflix.
Do you know what I would love to see in a theater?
What's that?
You and Me. Big as the silver screen.
Ooh,
in a
I like
private
this.
showing of the latest episode of Cordkillers. And the only way we could do that is to rent out a movie theater, which of course means everybody has to go to patreon.com/Cordkillers.
It's the only solution.
And become one of our bosses. Now listen, I don't know that we've talked about it quite enough. There's been a terrible, terrible reckoning. Thanos snapped his fingers and 20% of our audience vanished. By which I mean everybody who had been paying less than $1 an episode got scrubbed.
There was a time, you can find the quotes where we actively said, even if it's a penny, support us on Patreon.
Turns out a little over 200 people took us up on that, Tom.
Yeah. Also, it costs at least 50 cents for a single transaction to be processed. Usually more than that because there's also percentages. So Patreon stopped taking pledges that were less than $1 because of that, and apparently has now canceled the pledges that literally cost us both money to process.
Okay, look, I figure there's three types of people we're talking. First of all, our bosses, who are still our bosses. You're great. We love you. We're looking forward to our quarterly review. Second type of person, people who were one of those 250 people, in which case, you moochers, we were calling you boss this whole time and you were costing us money. What's that? Just come on, let's make it right. Let's make it right. Make it right. Just $1 an episode. That's all we ask. And the third type of people, concerned citizens who want to become bosses to help get me cured. You may have heard my throat's a little raggedy. Now, it's not like I have COVID or anything, but I do have 3-digit disease. I don't think any of us have COVID, do we?
Well, I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
You
I
don't,
don't know. I
Brian?
haven't tested since Thursday, so I may be over it.
Tom has COVID. Tom literally has COVID, and it's the fault of those 200 people who got scrubbed away.
It might be.
I mean, they can't prove that negative.
Yeah, prove that it's not true. You can't.
Can't prove it.
Please.
The only cure for all of this that is possible. The only cure for the end of this conversation is patreon.com/Cordkillers. Please just stop thinking and do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about how to watch. The gauge is actually Nielsen's regular measurement of how much TV watching people did across cable, broadcast, and streaming. We talked about the first time that streaming took the #1 spot on the gauge this summer, but we wondered if the return of the NFL, fall viewing, might tilt the scales back towards cable, at least temporarily. The answer is no, at least not yet. For the month of September, streaming made up 36.9% of viewing, moving farther ahead of cable's 33.8%. Cable stayed steady while streaming grew, and broadcast 24.2%. That was a big jump for broadcast, which had lingered around 12% in the summer. So the NFL, people return from autumn viewing, helped broadcast. It brought broadcast back up. It did not do anything to cable. And if anything, it helped streaming.
I would also imagine that there's some amount of fall season starting up on primetime traditional broadcast.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say like the autumn viewing season coming back, right? So that contributed as well. You're right.
I wonder where that 24% is going to go 3 months from now, 4 months from now.
Yeah.
Is it going to go back?
I feel like the broadcast number keeps being volatile, right? It'll follow the old broadcast trends and maybe slowly get smaller and smaller as people convert. Whereas cable, I think it's just going to beeline down for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing we predicted for 14 years definitely happened.
The next milestone to look for will be when the streaming number is better than cable and broadcast combined. It is not yet there. Now,
one of the things I'd love to keep an eye on is institutional replacement of cable and satellite TV, because your sports bars or any place where there's content on already, most of them are streaming devices. If interruptions are anything to judge by.
Mm-hmm. The other thing in the gauge is the ranking of the streamers. YouTube passed Netflix to top the chart. It now has 8% of streaming hours, followed by Netflix's 7.3%. Hulu got 3.8%. Prime Video 2.9%. Disney Plus got 1.9%, and HBO Max 1.3%. And at the very bottom of the chart, but enough to be called out separately, the first free ad-supported streaming service showed up on the detailed list. Pluto TV got 1%. Now, keep in mind, Peacock and Paramount Plus are not broken out. They're in this, but we don't know how much they got. Other streaming made up 10.7%, so mathematically they had to have less than a portion of that. But we don't know. They're not reported separately. But hey, look at that. We got a fast service showing up there. Like that fast stuff is real.
And not only that, it's real enough that that Netflix is kind of creating their own version of the same model. And
they're not.
Well,
they're not doing free. They're doing ad supported, but not free.
On it, you're right. No. That's fair.
They're doing past,
yeah,
paid ad supported. Yeah.
Well, Doc, I wish I knew. Maybe that makes Pluto the most interesting of the whole bunch. They're like a volatile penny stock, kind of.
Yeah. I wonder if the broadcast user goes to fast services.
I could totally
whereas the cable user goes to streaming services or past services.
I mean, if you're in a position, either a young adult or somebody who doesn't want cable or doesn't feel like they need all the channels or whatever, man, oh man, just going to Pluto TV certainly feels close, awfully close. It's like it's like having cable light.
Yeah. And one last side note here that's rather interesting in the light of the rise of streaming over cable. DirecTV's satellite delivery service, we're not talking about DirecTV now, we're talking about DirecTV that you put a satellite on top of your house, added a feature called Signal Saver. If customers connect their DirecTV box to the internet, the box can switch from satellite to broadband if the satellite signal gets interrupted. Apparently, it's not a seamless switch. It takes a few seconds. And it's available on 83 of DirecTV's hundreds of channels. So a lot of them, but not all of them. You also lose the ability to DVR, though it sounds like that's a technical issue, not a policy issue, because DirecTV says it expects for DVR to be available soon. But we've gone from a world where people are like, well, I want cable because, internet is choppy, to internet being the backup for your satellite service.
Yes, and keep in mind, this is one of those, I think of that only 90s kids will remember this meme. If you've ever been out in the country watching a satellite dish and it's been slightly cloudy, you will understand what a big, important deal this is, that there's literally anything to be done when a rainstorm comes in.
Yeah. Although half the time, if you're in that situation, you also don't have very good broadband and internet. So, your mileage may vary on that. All right, let's talk about what to watch in Under Surveillance.
It's all about location.
Under surveillance.
New trailer came out today for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Jonathan Majors shows up as Kang the Conqueror. It is the kickoff to Phase 5 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, coming out February 17th. What'd you think?
Loved it. I was really surprised because in general, I keep wanting to love all of the Ant-Man movies, but they land kind of middling for me. But this one looks like there's a lot of charm and pizzazz and exciting, dare I say, new things in the MCU.
Yeah, it looks super fun. I have questions, but those are good things to have when watching a trailer, which is, it should make you want to watch the movie. Yeah, well, it looks good. What about you, Bryce?
Oh, I didn't see it.
Oh, okay. Not interesting enough to try watching the trailer. So good. Got it. Next year, 2023, Amazon will not only stream Thursday Night Football, but will also pioneer a brand new NFL tradition, the Black Friday game. Black Friday, what we call the day after Thanksgiving in the U.S. because it's got all the sales. The NFL traditionally plays 2 games on Thanksgiving, and that's often seen as the time when everybody sleeps after eating, sit down, watch the games, etc. That's not going away, but this new game will take place the day after Thanksgiving on the shopping day, Black Friday, and be shown on Amazon Prime Video.
This is, I don't know how much game theory they're engaging in on this, but traditionally, as I've experienced it, Thursday belonged to television, Friday belonged to the movies. So instead, Friday could belong to sit your butt in a place where you can do your shopping while you half pay attention to this game.
Hopefully
all on,
on Amazon,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
If you're Amazon, that's what you're hoping. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think it's also interesting in the sense of when we've had new broadcasters, like when Fox first got the NFL, they tried a bunch of stuff that CBS and NBC and ABC, didn't try because those 3 networks had done it for so long that they're like, yeah, this works. Why would we try something new? So here we come with Prime Video getting an exclusive Thursday Night Football contract and saying, yeah, let's try something new. And the NFL is willing to play ball, literally, on Friday. HBO Max has a trailer out for yet another sequel to A Christmas Story. Previous sequels to A Christmas Story didn't have the original cast, though, and they flopped. So this new attempt is trying a thing called Use the Original Cast. It's called A Christmas Story Christmas and follows Peter Billingsley as Ralphie Parker returning to his childhood home to recreate an unforgettable holiday experience for his own children. So Ian Petrella, Zach Ward, Scott Schwartz, and Artie Robb are all set to reprise their roles as Randy Parker, Scott Farkas, Flick, and Schwartz, respectively, coming to HBO Max November 17th.
Ooh, don't you screw this up, HBO Max. This is like screwing up Santa Claus. This is like screwing up mistletoe. What are you doing? What are you doing?
On the same token, other people have tried to screw it up and everyone just forgot there were Christmas Story sequels. So
yeah, but this one has actually Santa Claus in it.
It does. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. I think it's a gamble. It's a gamble. It may not be the Christmas you want, says Unsafe DB Level, but it might be the Christmas you deserve. We've learned not to trust reports that Lucasfilm has agreed to develop a new Star Wars movie with anyone because none of them are ever officially confirmed or show signs of progress. Some have even reported to already have been shelved before they were officially acknowledged. There is one unnamed Star Wars project on the official Lucasfilm calendar for December 2025. Everyone assumes that might be Taika Waititi's, but we don't know for sure. However, Variety says there's another one. Added this one to the list. Damon Lindelof of Lost and Watchmen fame is developing a Star Wars movie that he will co-write and that they're hoping to get Ms. Marvel director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy to direct.
Yeah. Damon Lindelof also did that Alien prequel.
He did Prometheus.
Yeah.
That's true. He also did Star Trek and Star Trek Into Darkness. He worked on those.
Yeah. In general, I really dig Lindelof's work. I know he is a highly polarizing figure among hardcore sci-fi.
Yeah, some are Lindelon, some are Lindelof.
Hey, I'm not going to top that. Hey, Bryce, what do you had your eyes on?
No, we don't go to Bryce for eyes on.
I was trying to go to anyone.
I apologize for my actions. I think Damon Lindelof, I think he's a good bet for this. Just because of what he did with Watchmen, right? He took a beloved franchise and treated it well. And also I know he also worked on Prometheus, so I'm fully aware of that. But I think it's a good gamble.
And I liked Watchmen very much.
Yeah,
Justin is very loud about his not digging on The Watchmen. I'm for it, especially in an age where we finally have maybe the best thing Disney's done with the Star Wars franchise since buying it. I'm all for experimentation and interesting stories.
I know this is about movies. I know that's what the Variety thing reports. But when you have a guy whose greatest successes are TV shows, and you're hiring a director who directed really fun episodes of a TV show, wouldn't it make sense for them to do a TV show?
I agree. But in this world where up is down, left is right, black is white, day is night, I mean, who's to know?
Well, and how many Disney Plus TV shows have they just put out that everyone has said, why wasn't that just a movie?
Like Obi-Wan, right?
And so maybe like this started as a movie. I mean, if we're talking 2025, this could be anything. In 3 years, this could be a stage play. We don't know.
It could be a karaoke cover.
All right. I think it's now time for what we've had our eyes on, and I'll start in penance for what I did earlier in this episode. Atlanta is very good. It's absolutely worth your watching. It is still on. There are 3 more episodes left on FX, and it's in its 3rd season. If you haven't watched any of it, it gets weird. It gets experimental, and I think that's fun, especially in the 2nd season. But what's brilliant is in the 3rd season, some of that stuff you're like, they were just trying stuff, gets tied in and gets called back, and yet it's still very experimental. While it has got some very heavy social commentaries in many of the episodes, they are not entirely about race, although there are many of them about race, as you might expect. It's a good show, and it's a thinky show, and obviously not everybody wants a thinky show, and I get that, but it's well directed, well written, well acted, and I highly recommend it.
I only watched the 1st season, and I keep intending to watch the rest, but man, oh man, does it do that favorite trick of mine where it starts off looking like one thing and then becomes something else.
And then it does it again. And it's like, oh, so it's this. And it's like, no, I'm not that. And then you're like, oh, okay, so you're that show that's not anything. And then it goes back to being what it was before. And you're like, oh, but you're still really good at this. Okay, I get you. Yeah, it's they did a little Tyler Perry takedown in one of the episodes.
Awesome? Question mark?
I mean, is it a take? I use the word takedown, but it's also like,
or is it a send up, or is it an homage?
Takedown?
Or
is it Tyler Perry?
Is it a
just
parody?
Loosely based on Tyler? Is it a parody?
Oh,
I don't know.
I knew it. I dangled it.
Don't dangle. Don't dangle.
So what do you
on
had
this
your
show.
eyes on, Brian?
I rewatched all of Andor, all 7 episodes yesterday with my friend Andrew Heaton. And it was one of those times where it's like, well, let's just, hey, we're going to watch it. And we'll watch one. Well, I guess we should watch another. And I have no idea how it's landing for him. I, of course, like it a whole lot. It's my favorite thing. But I don't know how it's landing for him. And then there's this moment, like around episode 4, where we just keep on going. And somebody says something in one of the internal machinations at the Empire at the ISB. And I just hear Andrew Heaton breathe out and go, oh, so British. And it made me so happy. He was all in. I'm all in. I loved it. I love it. Can't wait to see more of it.
Oh, you know what? Beatmaster is reminding me of something that I should acknowledge as well. The final episode of Doctor Who with Jodie Whittaker aired on Sunday, and they have a very interesting ending. You see her regenerate, but there's some expectations might be subverted there. No spoilers. It's a really good final episode. The Chibnall, Jodie Whittaker era of Doctor Who is uneven. I enjoyed it, but I know a lot of people fell off because of the unevenness. Some of these specials were a little odd, and I didn't always get captivated by the specials, but this last special is really good. A lot of fan service in it. But also just I was interested. I didn't have to make myself pay attention, which is a good thing to say about a TV show. So yeah, I thought it was fun, and y'all should watch it if you like Doctor Who. This is a good point to get back in because it's going to lead into 3 more specials next year, and then the full on return of Russell T Davies with the new Doctor following in 2024.
Cool.
What should we be on the lookout for?
Hey,
Bryce.
Thank you. Bill sent along a suggestion based on an older show. Bill writes, my recommendation is Bosch and Bosch Legacy. Bosch Legacy is the continuation of the Bosch series from Amazon Prime Video, except Harry Bosch is now a private detective instead of an LAPD cop. And the other difference is that Bosch Legacy is on Freevee instead of Amazon Prime Video. Bill writes, I didn't realize that the Bosch novels were also written by the same author, Michael Connolly, who wrote the Lincoln Lawyer series, which was also recommended on the lookout recently. And apparently they've got some crossovers in the books, but the Lincoln Lawyer show was on Netflix. This is Amazon Prime.
So unlikely to see a crossover here.
Probably not. But thank you for the suggestion, Bill. There are 68 episodes of Bosch streaming now on Amazon Prime Video and 10 episodes of Bosch Legacy. And a new season's been ordered for that on Freevee, which is the free Amazon Fast service. So check that out. If you've got something we should be on the lookout for, please email it to us, cordkillers@gmail.com. Thank you.
Brian, what you got for me?
I'll tell you what I got. I have The Mysteries of the Internet available if you have a computer. Look, we're coming up on the holiday season. Everyone needs a new computer. Doghousesystems.com/rogue, ROGUE. They'll upgrade your system, and you'll be keeping us in business. We also announced today, I just sent out an email, that we're trying something experimental. Like the best magic trick I ever invented is very, very expensive. It's $1,200 for a set, but we figured out that we could reduce the price considerably if people paid for it and then waited a while for us to make them. So that's only going to last 2 more weeks, and then we're going to wrap it up. It'll be business as usual forever. This particular trick requires a specific printing of 3 specific books, and those books are getting increasingly difficult to get our hands on. So it is a credible threat when I say they will never be this affordable again. You can get a single book to do the trick for your loved ones for $200. It's at scamstuff.com.
Quite a discount. Nicely done. All right, let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines!
Apple announced some new iPads this week, but there are also 2 refreshed Apple TV 4K models. Both have support for HDR10 Plus if you have a TV that also supports it. And in fact, the Apple TV Plus app for Samsung is also getting support for HDR10 Plus. But these Apple TV 4K models run on an A15 processor. They include a remote that charges by USB-C instead of a Lightning port. The 64 gigabyte model costs $129, and the 128 gigabyte model with Ethernet, if you want an Ethernet port, costs $149, only $20 more. Available for pre-order right now, start shipping on November 3rd. If you have an Apple TV and you're happy with it, but you're like, gosh, I really wish I could charge the remote with USB-C, you can buy the USB-C charging Apple TV remote for $59, and that's already shipping.
You know what? I'd rather buy a new remote than a dongle. So kudos to you for breaking that dongle addiction, Apple.
Yeah, in this case anyway,
so
right?
courageous.
Yeah.
Google TV is adding some family-focused features like parent-controlled watch lists and algorithmically generated suggestions for kids' profiles. Parents will also be able to add titles to a child's must-watch list, and parents can define rating levels and add and remove titles to affect what shows get recommended by the algorithm. Ooh, that's nice. The features will show up first on Chromecast with Google TV, followed by other devices.
Nice.
Human control. I like it.
Yeah. And some innovative controls. Like there's so many family controls out there, but these are some interesting takes on it.
I actually trust the idea of kind of guiding an algorithm more than I trust myself to draw a barrier around something. Like if I'm able to say at this level of cartoon, but not at this level of cartoon, and pretty much trust the robots. Yeah.
A couple of price rises here in the land of inflation. YouTube raised the price of its YouTube Premium Family Plan from $17.99 a month to $22.99 a month. And because Apple takes 30%, YouTube charges more if you get it through the Apple Store. So if you're in iOS App Store, it'll cost you $29.99 a month. A single YouTube Premium account is staying at $11.99 a month, so it still will save you a couple of bucks even if you only share it between 2 people. And if you share it with more than 2 people, it saves you quite a bit. You can share up to 6 accounts. YouTube Premium, if you don't recall, includes ad-free YouTube video viewing, downloadable videos, a subscription to YouTube Music, and background play. So you can still hear audio even when the app is minimized. Apple also raised the price of Apple TV Plus. It went up $2, so it is now $6.99 a month. And they said that's because they've got more stuff in there now. So they only thought it was worth $5 a month when they launched it, and now it's worth $7.
That's pretty wild, where a price increase is actually a vote of confidence for yourself, where it's like, no, it's really good. We're Apple TV. We have severance.
We're worth it, says Apple. Raises price. Yeah,
and you're worth it, so give it to us. Fubo TV announced last week that it has closed its sports betting product. Basically, they didn't see it as being profitable. Otherwise, Fubo is doing well with 1.2 million subscribers and income beating expectations. Tom, there's only one way I could think of for gambling to not be profitable, and that either you're not reaching enough people, or the overhead is too much, or I mean, it's shocking to me that in an expanding market like that, maybe it was too much of a distraction from the core product.
I think it was too complicated to implement and manage. If you're not DraftKings, right? Like DraftKings can do it because they've got an entire organization to do it. They probably looked at it and said, we're just not going to get to scale fast enough.
And they would also be late to the game. DraftKings is in that sweet spot of having started before Prohibition was revealed. Like they got a running start.
Yeah. It's more it's quite a fast turnaround. I wonder if it was compliance issues, legal issues, that they're like, we just don't want to pay for that.
I would totally believe that.
Anyway, a few other things. A trailer is out for season 5 of The Crown, as we mentioned earlier. It returns November 9th. The description for the trailer clarifies, inspired by real events. This fictional dramatization tells the story of Queen Elizabeth II, just in case you were confused about whether it was a documentary or not. It's fictional, not a documentary. HBO released a trailer teaser trailer anyway, for season 4 of Succession. Still no date for Succession season 4, but it will come sometime next year. Warner Brothers Discovery has launched a free Motor Trend channel on Samsung TV Plus, so that's a fast channel for Samsung TV Plus. And Hulu has released the official trailer for Welcome to Chippendales, starring Kumail Nanjiani as Soman Steve Banjari, a founder of the famous male stripper clubs. That series premieres on Hulu November 22nd.
I'm very stoked about the Chippendales thing. I think anything that has Kumail Nanjiani on it, I want to give a chance to, except apparently for the Eternals. But also this is a fascinating story about, as you know, I love anyone who dares to serve an underserved market. You know, like the idea is like, wait a minute, here's an obvious thing that nobody's doing.
Yeah. No, it's cool.
Can I say?
Yeah.
I don't know the Chippendale story, but I definitely thought it was an excuse to show us Kumail with his shirt off because he got all ripped recently.
Nope.
I'm glad you brought that up.
That's not who he's playing,
but
though.
It's not who he's playing, and I was glad. I was like, okay, good, put it away, Kumail. You're better than that.
We know. You're an embarrassment to everyone who's not you.
No. A lot of donuts were eaten during COVID. A lot can change.
I'll be honest. If I'm Kumail, I'm gonna want to do that too. I get it. Let's move to the dispatches from the front. Now, Bill, who we used your recommendation about Bosch in the On the Lookout, was surprised to see all of the seasons of the original Bosch also available on Freevee. He says, I remember when Bosch was being used as one of the first shows to advertise Amazon Prime streaming video service. I'm a little surprised to see that Bosch is available without a paid subscription. My question is, do you think other companies are going to do this too? And the answer is, they are.
They already, I was about to say, not only will they have been.
In fact, I think it's interesting that people aren't as aware. Everybody knows about Pluto. And people like Bill, who later in his email acknowledged that, like, I know Paramount has Pluto, and they put a lot of Paramount CBS stuff on Pluto. Comcast owns Xumo, XUMO, which you can watch for free and carries a lot of NBC stuff as well as stuff from other places. And they also have Peacock. So they have a second free ad-supported streaming platform. Peacock's free tier has a grid-like system like Pluto that's not run by Pluto or Zumo. It's an entirely separate thing. Samsung TV Plus does this. Samsung doesn't really make shows, but there are a lot of these out there, and I'm trying to think. Disney is the only one that doesn't have one, but they do a lot of putting shows on Pluto and Zumo and others, and Roku, because Roku has one. Roku has originals that they're putting on there. Amazon has Freevee. So Netflix is the only one who just doesn't do this at all.
Well, and even then, what Netflix does do is some of their originals show up in international markets as broadcast TV shows. I mean,
yeah, but he's talking about like fast networks.
Sure.
Like, what's the analog? If Netflix were to put Stranger Things channel on Pluto, for instance.
Sure. I guess what it makes me think of is my surprise to find out that so many of my favorite NBC shows were made by CBS and just happen to run on NBC. So
sure.
It's tough to detach the brand. Like once the content's made, it's like you just want dollars for it.
Sure. Yeah, that is also a thing. I think what Bill is asking is, are we going to see Netflix do this? Are we going to see Disney create their own fast channel? Because everybody else has one. Fox has Tubi. Paramount has Pluto. Comcast has Zumo. Roku has Roku. Amazon has Freevee. The list goes on.
Probably, but those two examples, I would say that Disney Plus is currently in the middle of a land grab and will be, in my mind, for the foreseeable future. Netflix is busy being king, and right now they have to be all in on their paid ad support. I don't know that Netflix ever goes totally free.
Yeah, I don't see Netflix doing it, and I see Disney not wanting to be in that business, but maybe. Yeah, I'd never say never on Disney. I'd almost say never on Netflix, but then they flipped on so many things. Who knows, right?
I bet it's more likely that Netflix does either like free weekends, like HBO used to do,
Ooh.
or I think we've seen in some international markets where at Netflix you can just watch like the first episode of some original shows.
Right.
So,
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. John Flowers writes, Brian and Tom, let me start by saying I am not an octopus. I only have 2 human hands with which I hold the dollars I give you to stay loud, live, and independent. Sounds like something an octopus would say if they were supporting us on Patreon. But okay, John, we'll take your word for it. Many, many years ago, you told me about this upstart over-the-top service DirecTV Now, and I've been a grandfathered-in user until this past week. We finally bit the Disney Plus, Hulu Live, ESPN bullet, and are pretty happy so far. We had been a 3-year inaugural Disney Plus subscriber and wanted to consolidate the money we were spending. We had been keeping DirecTV Now just for live sports, San Jose Sharks hockey, and cable login on some apps. So far, my wife hasn't complained about the changes. So far, so good. But I do have to admit, while I'm a cord never, I'm feeling like a cable subscriber more and more these days.
To that, I say, welcome to the club. I mean, yeah, it really does kind of feel that way. And I don't know how I feel about it. It does start to feel like a chore.
Yeah, I feel like it's different though. We have to continually remind ourselves that in the heyday of cable, you had no choice. you had the cable company, or you could ask, DirecTV or Dish to put something on your house. Maybe there was like a Bright House or something. And once you got them, you got them. It was all or nothing. There was a tier with a bunch of digital channels that maybe you're into, but probably not. But pretty much everything everybody wanted was on one tier that you paid a very high price for. Where we're at now is choice. It's control. It's not cheaper. And I think that's the thing everybody wanted to be true, was like, oh, and it'll be cheaper. And fact is that other than fast services, it's not.
Josh wrote in chiming in on the whole binging versus weekly discussion, and points out the fact that when you're looking at a commitment of 10 episodes, that keeps him from even trying certain things or immediately fizzling out on them. He said it also helps for big dramas to have everything. He makes the case that maybe there is something to weekly, especially when it comes to big water cooler moments, which, again, there's a legitimate case to be made for it, for sure.
Yeah. No, I think that is the advantage. And that's why I think it depends on the story and it depends on the audience. Most shows are done before they show up, whether they're going to go week to week or binge. So it's not like they adapt as you watch them if it's week to week. But there certainly is something to that water cooler moment of, having the big reveal and the cliffhanger and getting everybody talking about it. Netflix's argument in their earnings call was, we'll take the 4.5 times spike of the binge release over the small, stable weekly buzz that something like Lord of the Rings got, because we'll just come up with another big spike the next week, right? Rather than have to have small spikes all the time.
Right.
Because you don't want to have small spikes.
I pass no judgment and if anybody does, they better write us at cordkillers@gmail.com.
You can find that email address at our website, cordkillers.com. We're also live on twitch.tv/Night Attack, which is also carried on diamondclub.tv Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. No matter how small your spikes are, please come watch us.
Yeah, I gave up the spikes. Hey, Tom Merritt, what's going on?
I'm just hanging out here watching this scroll go by. What are you doing?
Trying to set up a bit where we thank our beautiful, beautiful patrons, all these wonderful
names. I'm sorry,
names.
I'm too distracted looking at these beautiful, beautiful patron names going by. Look at that one. I mean, if you wanted to be one of these people, patreon.com/cordkillers would be the place to go.
I mean, they're scratching our itch, like, because we're addicted.
As long as it's consensual, like,
we're addicted to their money.
And love. Might as well face it.
Well, God damn it.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.